Hey everyone, it's John Orlando from the PVD Cast, and I wanted to take a few moments of your time to let you know where you can find the PVD Cast. The online home of yours truly, PVDcast.com, is a great place to go, but it's also available through all the major podcasting platforms like Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, etc. There's also live broadcasts of the PVD Cast every single week. Mondays 8 p.m. Eastern through the Facebook page of the PVD Cast, and Tuesdays at 7:30 p.m. through the Scene Snobs Facebook page. And no matter how you listen, please make sure you rate, review, and subscribe. And with that, I will chat at each and every one of you later.
What's going on, everybody? It's the Scene Snob, Mick Manhattan, and I'm here to tell you guys about thescenesnobs.com. We're a channel of variety, comedy, entertainment, geek-related, sports, the whole nine yards. We cover almost every genre. We have so many great shows to choose from. We have shows like the Scene Snobs Podcast, BTB Podcast, The Guapo Show, the Sports Snobs Podcast, the PVD Cast, Jeff Dwoskin presents Crossing the Streams, the Three Geeks Podcast, the Fandom Effect. We probably have the only Matlock-based podcast called Matt Talk, and we're introducing new shows all the time. We have new shows coming up like the Ear Hustling Podcast, Carpool Shenanigans, and of course, from some nobodies, Twitching Upstream and Talking Upstream. So come on, check out thescenesnobs.com, enjoy it, and please leave feedback. Like, follow, subscribe us, and just let us know what you think. We love to have all the interaction. So I, again, am the Scene Snob, Mick Manhattan. Check out thescenesnobs.com. You can follow us anywhere on social media at The Scene Snob. And we will talk to you guys soon. Take care.
Hey everybody, it's CJ Graham, Jason Voorhees. That's right, Friday the 13th, part 6. And you're listening to thescenesnobs.com.
Smithsonian Institute of Fine Arts.
Close. I am a curatorial assistant and a project coordinator at the Smithsonian American Art Museum. So the Smithsonian is built of 19 different units. So each museum is kind of like its own little bubble, sort of. So I'm at SAM, as us government employees love our acronyms, which shares the building with the National Portrait Gallery in Chinatown in DC.
Nice. Well, I'm going to tell you this. I'm leaving this in so it's done right. I'll do an intro at the end. Anne, thank you so much for being on the show today. Anne is, for everybody watching, Anne is a good friend. We've known each other for years. She's smarter than me, so I'm always happy to have her tell me what's going on in the world. As you guys know, I don't know what's going on. But Anne is here to join me today. We're going to review Wonder Woman 84. I would love to hear your perspective as a woman, but also as somebody who has such a deep appreciation and knowledge of art, and where Wonder Woman came from. You know history so well. So, I thought that would really play into a different perspective of the movie. To start, I did not really love this movie.
I also did not love this movie. I love Wonder Woman. I love Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. She brings so much spice to that role. Love Linda Carter, obviously the OG, and she's a Capitals fan, first of all. But this was not the Wonder Woman we we deserved in 2020. This was not, we needed a real woman hero, heroine in this moment, and that is not what we got.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Well, I will say this part. Well, even then, like they took the character. So for anybody who hasn't seen Wonder Woman 84, we are going to spoil a bit because we're going to talk about certain aspects of it. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it and then come back and check out the conversation. But for me, the thing that took out is the first movie, she was so independent, so strong of a character. Even like the way she talked, like when they were having the conversation about sex when they were in the boat. And she was just like, why are we acting like this isn't something that's real and happens? And then you get to this one and it's like she's, for lack of a better term, pining after Chris Pine's character, Steve Trevor in the movie. And, like she's lost. It's been, 40, 50 years, 60 years, whatever it was. To that point where she's still like her long lost love is all, she's still lonely for him. And then when he comes back, it's like all about him.
I think also, you think about the things in the first Wonder Woman, and I feel like we're probably going to go back to that movie a lot because it was, vastly superior in my opinion. But the things that you really loved about the Wonder Woman character were totally lost in the second film. Like she had this, she had a genuine curiosity to her. And for somebody, I think the fact that they picked her as a museum employee is really perfect because there is, you do feel a sense of curiosity all the time when it comes to research and writing and, thinking about objects. You just constantly want to know more. That was definitely lost. She didn't have that sense of, exploration, or just, I think curiosity is a really interesting word because, she seemed in the first few scenes of 1984, she was lost, and she was lost because she didn't have her partner. And that is not, that's not the Wonder Woman we were introduced to in 2017.
Yeah. And I think that for me too, I don't mind that maybe she's lost without her partner if there was a grieving feel to it. Like I can understand that. I can understand depending on someone, or not depending, but like loving somebody so much that with them gone, there's a state of grieving. But then he should have never come back.
For sure. Oh, I just on like a total fangirl base, I feel that Chris Pine is one of the superior Chris's. So I guess I have to like disclose that up front, that I do have, I in the hierarchy of Chris's, he's up there.
He's not my number one, but he's my number two.
Oh, he probably flip-flops on my number three. It's always Chris Hemsworth. Like there's no question about that.
Number one.
Chris Evans and Chris Pine probably flip-flop between the two.
It's Captain Kirk. So you're going to have Chris Hemsworth is number one, Chris Pine number two. And the flip-floppers there are Chris Evans and Chris Pratt.
I feel like Chris Pratt has dropped off for me. He is guided by his religion a little too much for my taste. I'll put it that way.
And there's nothing wrong with that because that's just a matter of preference, and I understand it. Tinder is the right one, right? Twitter is Twitter. See, I've been married too long. I don't know this stuff.
My marriage also predates online dating. Like when online dating was a faux pas when Chad and I got married. We didn't have Tinder. We didn't have Bumble. And I'm actually kind of jealous, but
It would have been so much easier, I think.
Married, dating apps,
Yeah, so like now I just call it Twinder. And I'm going to stick with that. But yeah, you're passing left, I guess, on Chris Pratt, and so am I. Jurassic Park was fun, but
yeah,
you're no Sam Neill. So for me, when it comes to Wonder Woman 84, it opened up. I was very excited because they shot it right here a lot of it right here where we are in Washington, D.C. area. And you especially are right there. You and my wife work in D.C. So that was like sort of a big deal. I remember her saying like, oh, I remember watching from the FAA building.
I'm so jealous that she got to, I mean, we got, notifications about street closures and stuff like that. But of course, DC being, DC, they weren't saying for any specific reason until the NBC app came out and was like, Wonder Woman's being filmed on Pennsylvania Avenue. And
yeah, it opens right up. And then and that's exciting for like anybody. Like you just travel the streets and it's like, oh, I mean, this is a huge movie. And then we get it. And then we watch it. And it's like, what'd you do?
Well, rewind to that and the fact that the Smithsonian Natural History Museum plays a front and center role is like an extra layer of excitement for, me and my colleagues in the museum industry, because it's like the epitome of like girl power, and a female superhero is an employee at the Smithsonian is just like, it's like, okay, well, nice. I don't understand how she jumped from working at the Louvre to moving to DC to work at the Smithsonian in the 80s, because that, to me,
I get it. I can understand that though.
I mean,
well, she works at the Louvre in the future. Remember, because that's the Batman versus Superman.
That's right. I didn't know.
And remember, she has to move around because she doesn't age.
That's right.
So I kind of get that feeling like, okay, she'll work in DC for like these 20 years or whatever, and try and get away with like not aging.
As a career jump, I was like, that's kind of backwards, but it definitely makes sense that she would move to Paris to work at the Louvre in the future. That makes a lot more sense.
So it's, and I liked that they kind of played that out, like she's going to work all over and kind of know every point of it. And I mean I get it though. Smithsonian, like for somebody who's a layman, and when it comes to the art world and museums, and I just appreciate more than I know anything about it. I took one art history class in college, and it was film school, so it wasn't really like a great art history class. So for me, Smithsonian is like one of the best of, like that's how we see it, like from the outside perspective. So
yeah, I was interested. So just as a little kind of weird background, the Natural History Museum just in 2019 reopened their fossil hall after probably almost, I would say 5 or 6 years being closed, maybe a little bit longer. They redid everything. They have a brand new T-Rex, almost full skeleton on display. And to see how they were going to kind of, I mean, it is like a wonder mess of just technology everywhere when you go into that building now. And to see them kind of scale all that back to take place in the 80s was really interesting. Particularly, one of the things that's one of the biggest draws in any museum that I've ever seen is being able to watch these experts in natural history museums. We have an art conservation center at SAM where you can watch conservators work on painting, but they still kept that kind of observation space in the film, which is a very small positive of this movie. That there are a few positives.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess story-wise, but that is a really cool detail. And I would never know that, but to even scale it back to, because I would never think that, because even dinosaurs, what we knew about dinosaurs has changed so much from the 80s until now.
Oh, totally.
And it would have to reflect that, or anybody who does know anything is going to be like, that's wrong. So I kind of dig that. I like that. That feel like they put that much detail into it.
Yeah.
See, that's why I invited you on the show. I would never know that.
You can go to the Natural History Museum once it reopens after, the pandemic is over and watch. I mean, the last time I was there was someone working on fossils with this, they're basically in a giant aquarium. where people can just like tap on the glass. You shouldn't tap on the glass, by the way. You or a museum, do not touch anything, please. But it's a pretty cool experience, especially because these people are just, they're probably totally zoned out, just doing the work that they do every single day to learn more so they can teach people about these things.
And my kids would absolutely love that. I mean, they're big into dinosaurs too, but I mean, I think museums are just, especially when you're a kid, it's like a place of wonder, and we need to take more kids to the museum. They need to grow up to be like you and working at them.
Oh, well, not if you want them to make a lot of money.
Come on, what are they going to do? Podcasts like me? They ain't going to make a lot of money that way.
More museum employees. Definitely.
That is, I mean, but it's awesome work that you guys are doing. And, but when it comes to Wonder Woman, I want to go back a little bit too, because, she started on the printed page and, as a comic book character. And, I've talked about it earlier and such that, for me, that is one of the best art outlets, I guess, right now, or ever. It's just everything that's always changed with it. It's adapted, it's evolved throughout, but it's always beautiful.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, for anyone watching, I'm by no means a comic book expert or a Wonder Woman scientist. But I have always had a fondness for comic books and comic book characters. And, they really are painstakingly beautiful objects. And you think that, you think about illustrated books that people love, but these are illustrated cell by cell. And I think that the amount of detail, if you open, an original comic book and look at it, the amount of detail in, the corner of a page is just incredible. And you have to build a story from this art. And I think that's a totally complex layer to comic books as a whole, as an art form, that, you can have a painting that tells a story in a two-dimensional way, but these comic books are basically like micro paintings on page after page after page that have to have a real narrative to them. Mm-hmm. So I've always really just loved them. No expert, but I just think they're really beautiful things in terms of art objects.
In the world of, of feminist movement and such, Wonder Woman has been such an icon. And there have been very few, I don't want to say very few, because more and more over the years have come out, always very hypersexualized, but almost that almost plays into an independence of the character, of each character. But with Wonder Woman, she's always remained. She's always been the top, I would say.
Yeah.
Why do you think that Wonder Woman transcends all of that? It seems like no matter what female superhero has been created, Wonder Woman reigns supreme everywhere.
I mean, for the really unsexy answer, I think that exposure is probably the first and foremost. I mean, Linda Carter as Wonder Woman had a very successful television series, mm-hmm. Which was, at the time, what was, I guess, the 70s and 80s was when that was out. And that was right around the time of the height of first wave feminism. Mm-hmm. And you think about, the arts in general are always going to be interconnected in some way, shape, or form. And my background is in fine art. I specifically have an interest in feminist art and performance art in the mid 20th century. And I think a lot of television and a lot of movies borrow from fine art when thinking about what's going to make a hit. And in the at this time period, to come out with a show that was like this, not only beautiful, but powerful and iconic character as a TV show was obviously going to be a hit. So that's, the very practical, logical answer to what I think that is. But I also think that, women have always looked up to a goddess figure. And I don't mean that in, the 21st century witch term or like praise goddess or anything like that. I mean, it does, whatever, to each their own. But I think the fact that she's not a human, the fact that she comes from another planet and is a higher being in a sense, as something that's always resonated with my identity as a woman. When I was little, I was obsessed with like the Greek goddesses. I loved them. Shout out to Artemis. She was my favorite, who is Diana in Roman, which is Diana in Wonder Woman, which is a fun connection. But I think that, those things are always kind of interconnected, and someone must have at some point thought about all of those things when thinking about Wonder Woman as a woman to be admired by other women. And I think Patty Jenkins was very smart to stick to a lot of the very specific characteristics of Diana / Wonder Woman. It does have that old school appeal, but she's a different hero for like women of my age who are, second or third generation feminists.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that because, like, for me to look up to superheroes, you say like and being such a comic book guy, I think it always like the geekier. Like, you're obviously a geek. You're an art geek. Everybody's a geek of something. Yeah, fair enough. Nobody else is going to believe it either when I say it. I'm a geek, definitely. But like when you're a geek about something, and something means that you love something so much that you can talk about it for hours and just appreciate it. I always loved comic books. Growing up, like, I always felt weak. I mean, you've met me. I'm 6'8" and like just gigantic.
I was not intimidated by you for 1 second when I first met you.
You 100%. And again, Ann and I have been friends for years. Ann, not intimidated by anybody. So, but that's why I wanted to have you on and talk about Wonder Woman. And as strong as a character as she is, you're a very strong woman, and I wanted to that related to me to be able to talk about this. But for like me, when I see Superman growing up, Superman is that being. I'm not, it'd be fun to play Superman, but growing up, it was like, here's somebody who's just altruistic and good, that I hope would exist, or people like that will exist to do good in the world and to inspire me to do good. Batman's that guy. It's like, if he's another guy who's just a person who's willing to push forward and do as much good as he can with the limitations he has. Same with Spider-Man. Like, he has some power, but like, he has problems.
Yeah, I think I that's such an interesting thing, because everyone, I mean, on some level can relate to a lot of the character flaws of these superheroes. And maybe, now that we're even talking about this, maybe the flaw of Diana / Wonder Woman was the fact that she loved so hard.
Yeah. And her first love too, like to leave your world where you've never even met a man before and you fell in love with this man. So yeah, now that's why I like having these conversations. I start convincing myself.
And that it was a good movie?
No, I won't go that far. There's a lot of things I liked about it, and I was glad they brought Chris Pine back into the fold. And I also liked how he was like, you have to let me go. Because it did have a message of, you are strong enough to do this without me. You don't need me, and you shouldn't be alone because you're a special person. Yeah. So like, I did like that idea of it. Like, and being married, we're both married. We're both, you to your husband, me to my wife, who are just, and you always want to uplift the person that you're with. So when he does that, for me, it was, extra special, because I was like, he's uplifting her, and that's the way it should be. He's not trying to say like, yeah, I mean, I understand you'll miss me, or give like a cop-out speech, like Superman, like, Lois, I love you, like, but I gotta go do this, and like, she's just like, I don't want you to go. Like, he's like, no, you can do this without me. You don't need me, but I'll always be in your heart. Like uplifting her.
Yeah.
And that's a good feeling, especially in a movie like this. What wasn't a good feeling in this movie was how they did Cheetah. I was very unhappy with that. Barbara Minerva's character, played by Kristen Wiig.
That was rough. And I'm a big Kristen Wiig fan. I think she's one of the. I find myself going back to her old episodes of SNL all the time because I think she's just an unbelievable actress. But they really kind of didn't play to her strengths in a way that they could have. And I think that the character fit into, this kind of mold of being a power-hungry weakling, mousy, researcher. Also, they would not leave those objects on a table without anything on top of, like, with them just being all willy-nilly. An Easter egg flaw. They would not, a proper scientist would not leave those objects just like unwrapped on a table for anyone to grab. And none of them would be allowed to take something back to their desk to just sit there.
I do love that. And see, those are the little things that we need to know because it isn't like that. And, it's nice to have that realism. Like, because I was questioning, I'm like, why is she just bringing this back to her office? I was like, is this how this works? Like,
honestly, maybe in the 80s, a lot has changed in the museum field. To be quite frank with you, in the last 40 years. God, it's been 40 years since 1980. Let's think about that for a minute.
Yeah. Well, how do you feel about it being set in the 80s? Because for me, it was one thing I did like, it was very colorful. And now comic books.
So they could have done so much with. I loved Kristen Wiig's characters. I loved Barbara's outfit changes. As her character got more and more evil, her outfits got edgier, which I thought was really cool. And you think about the 80s and you go from puffy sleeved wedding dresses to neon to kind of acid wash. And they brought Barbara's character kind of through the gambit of 80s women's fashion, which I thought was awesome. They didn't do that with Diana, which was kind of crazy. She had some really chic, menswear for women was really in the 80s, and they had some really chic suits and stuff like that. But she didn't kind of exude that. The poster has all this this color and these, this neon and glitter on the movie poster, and you just didn't get that from her.
Well, I took. I'm sorry, I'm gonna cut you off. I took that as, for me, her character of Diana is muted, and she's lived for so long. Her style is going to be based in all of the decades she's lived.
So she's got to obviously live pretty classically if she's gonna. Nobody wants to be buying a new wardrobe every decade.
Yeah, well, not just that, but I got the feel of sometimes when you look at the dresses, and not always, but a very 1920s vibe or 1940s vibe, or even a 50s starlet.
Sure. The stuff is just everlasting, kind of.
Yeah, she's come into such a, and even in the newer movies, I feel it's the same way because again, she's so colorful in her uniform.
Don't you think to be advertised as you slap on 1984 to a movie, don't you want to see the 80s come through?
Oh yeah.
Steve had his moment with his cute little that was probably the only thing that made me laugh out loud the entire movie, was that whole montage of his. For one, I don't have any sort of fashion sense whatsoever. I love a fanny pack. Love a pair of leggings. I'm not one to talk about fashion, but you just, I don't know, you just kind of want to see a little bit more. But Barbara did bring that. She brought that kind of she even had the kind of half shaved head at one point. And
Yeah, and but that I think that was a good yin to Diana's yang, like where she's muted in her life. She's going to be statuesque, beautiful. She knows what she is, and she's a strong woman, but she's still unsure of herself and like how she lives. She misses her love, like so she kind of mutes her colors. Whereas starting out, we have Barbara trying to be kind of like, her clothes are like leopard print, and she's trying to peacock as much as possible.
That's a good, yeah.
And as she goes on, she doesn't become more muted. She becomes more outrageous, but in a more well put together way. Like, whereas it's sort of messy in the beginning, by the end, it's getting wilder and wilder, but in a sexualized way.
Yeah.
Once she becomes Cheetah, she's muted. Now, don't get me wrong, that whole visual.
No, and that actually, I mean, you think about it, and it kind of is the opposite for what happened with Diana when she suited up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, had that like gold armor on, and it was a pretty, I mean, you think about just in terms of patterns or colors, something like gold, like a bright, lustrous gold, is going to immediately clash with an animal print.
Yeah.
And those two things, like, you don't want to see them together because it just is like, it's too much for your eyes. You know what I mean? So it makes sense that they would be conflicting. I mean, just in terms of like color palette and pattern in that sense. So that's a really interesting. I actually went to go watch the movie again, and it's not on HBO anymore. So
yeah, they took it off, and I saw that, and I was like, okay, I'm okay with not watching it again. I did watch it again because we were supposed to do this a couple of weeks ago, so I was like, I'll watch it, and I watched it, and I was just like, yeah.
yeah, I love picking things apart. So watching it after our conversation would be of a huge interest to me. Poor Chad would have to sit through it again, but
I don't think Mary will sit through it again. She'll sit through the first one over and over. But that was the biggest thing. I saw that movie with her in the theaters, and this was 2016. So when we saw it, we sat in theaters, and I felt how empowered she became watching that movie. And I love that. I love going to a movie theater. One of the biggest things I've always said was I remember going to see the new Ninja Turtle movies the day Robin Williams died. That's how I remember that. That's where I was. And I sat in that theater, and because it was the only thing playing, it was at Manassas 4. And I sat in that theater watching it, and a mom came in with 4 like 8-year-old, 9-year-old kids at the time, and they were all sitting behind me. And just hearing them like, oh, what is the Ninja Turtles? They didn't know. I had no idea. They had no idea what it was. Like, and they watched the movie, but by the end, like the one kid saying, I'm Leonardo and I'm Michelangelo. And like hearing them all so excited to go home and play Ninja Turtles. I was like, I remember that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
That made me appreciate the movie more. And, being at the theater for the first Wonder Woman and walking out, my wife cannot stop talking about it. And not in a bad way. I'm very excited to hear what she's saying and hear how empowered she is and how that movie really made her feel. I was like, that's amazing. I was like, I love that feeling. So when we sat down to watch the second one, I'm like, at least if it's not good, I will get that.
But you want that same like palpable reaction. I mean, whether it's in you or in someone else that you're with, like the power of movies is, you want to have some sort of visceral reaction. I mean, for me, that's how I feel about art in general. It's like anything that I find interesting, I feel I have a physical reaction to it, if it's good or if it's bad. And I want to dissect which one and why. I'm sorry to cut you off, but when it came out in 2017, and I speak for myself, and I don't speak for Mary, but I know Mary well enough to know she probably was feeling a lot of the same disappointment after the 2016 election, having the hope of potential of a female president for the first time in American history. You know, whether or not the candidate was perfect is one thing, but to feel like you're represented in a way that you never have been before is important.
Yeah.
I think,
oh, I'm sorry.
no, I was just going to say, I think this is something that has become, you know, a snowball effect in the last, I mean, I say decade, but, you know, I think this is something that a lot of groups have been feeling for decades and centuries, to be honest. And Wonder Woman was that the first movie when it came out, just historically speaking, was a moment that I think most women can say, like, I needed that. I needed a hero that I could feel connected to in a way that I've never felt connected to before.
Yeah.
You know, having an elected official who is blatantly misogynistic and demeaning towards women and people of color and the LGBTQ community. I think that Wonder Woman was an icon that we needed. Maybe not everyone across the board, but I felt as a woman watching that movie and having dealt with my own emotional stress of you know, a new administration and the political repercussions of that as a woman was an uplifting thing. So not like bring this to that kind of place, but I think, you know, if you are part of a community that is constantly being, if your rights are being threatened in any way, shape, or form, I think having representation in something like that is a big deal.
And I gotta, you know, speaking from a white male perspective, you know, for so long, it took me getting married. It took me falling in love and getting married to understand those things. And not in a way where it's like, I can speak out on them. I understand.
Well,
No, understand is I'm more empathetic towards, like something like that. Like when I saw Mary Empowered after we saw the first one, I realized why my mother and all of the stuff she's dealt with throughout her life loved Wonder Woman. She never cared about comic books. She never, you know, like none of that stuff was for her, but she loved Wonder Woman. It was something she looked up to. She had a Wonder Woman keychain. And I'm thinking back to it and I'm like, this is why. I mean, this is representation of a powerful woman. And she was a powerful woman. But you know, I feel like a lot of it, like when I say we look up to, you know, young men look up to Superman and they're like, aspire to be more. This is something that Wonder Woman is more of a representative, and please correct me if I'm wrong, of we can be powerful too. Women are saying like that's a representation of women are able to be powerful.
Yeah, I think it's also like the fact that she is a powerful force on her own accord. And I love the fact that she comes from a place that is only women and it's all powerful women and they live. I mean, I think one of the really important things that Patty Jenkins did in the, you know, the early scenes with Diana as a child in the first movie and, you know, as a child in the second movie, but like those women, they have conflicts, but the higher power is to protect their themselves, each other. And I think, you know, you get a lot of this sense of like cattiness from a lot of strong female characters. And at least in the first movie, you don't see that in Diana. Like she's literally fighting a war on behalf of the good, basically, I think is the metaphor in that movie. The second one, there is a bit of competitiveness, which I think was kind of off again for her character traits that you really love in the first film.
Yeah.
You know, I think that Cheetah was Barbara Minerva was jealous, and I think that that's not necessarily a great way to keep Wonder Woman's character developing in the 21st century. I think, those kinds of things don't need to present themselves or manifest. But again, I'm not an expert in the comic book storylines. I just think that it missed the mark a little bit for me in that sense.
Well, there's always in the comics, in Barbara Minerva, there's a competitiveness with Diana, but she's not a weak character. It's not I'm weak, you're strong, you get everything, I've got nothing. It's it's like their careers are competitive. She wants to be recognized for her capabilities, and she seeks out a way to become more powerful as she finds out who Wonder Woman is, or who Diana is, being Wonder Woman, and how to kind of match that. And she reaches out she finds a god. She searches a god and gains these powers of the cheetah. It's not like something you wished for.
Yeah, I will. It's so funny. We're like 30 minutes into this conversation, and we have not once addressed Pedro Pascal's character
at all. I mean, and he did a great job in it.
Oh, he's one of my current favorite actors.
Oh yeah. And the thing I like about him, and he does it on The Mandalorian, and a funny thing, the same week he did it in the episode of The Mandalorian that he did it with Wonder Woman coming out. He shows emotion. He's a male heroic character that will cry and show emotion. And in Wonder Woman, the thing I really loved about it is his character, Maxwell Lord, that's very distant from kind of what he is. Maxwell Lord is more manipulative rather than trying to seek out success.
Sure.
But the father figure and the fact that he is pushing away his kid the entire time, but in the end, he's willing to give up everything to save his son, meant so much to me, because I was like, that's showing, at least it's not taking the male character and saying he's just a power hungry guy and that's what it is. He's not Donald Trump, which is the perfect representation of every 90s oil baron villain in kids' movies. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
He's such
his character was the flow of the unraveling of the plot of the film was very long for me. I feel like it was very drawn out. I think that it was not, and maybe this is just, movies like this, I don't want to have to think that hard. I think about it after the fact. I want to, obviously I have all these little moments of considering things while I'm watching the movie, but I couldn't, it wasn't obvious to me what his storyline was. And I couldn't understand this is part of why I wanted to rewatch the film, was because I didn't understand the correlation with the object, and if he was getting sicker or if he was getting, that to me was a little bit confusing.
It was, so from what I gathered, yes, it was confusing, very convoluted. The stone basically thrived off of people's wishes.
Sorry, my dad's calling me.
Oh, do you need to talk to him?
No.
I will. I can cut that out. It's no problem.
No, they're FaceTiming me. I think he's with my niece. I'm pretty sure.
Are you sure you don't need to take it?
No, it's.
Oh, all right. Just making sure. I promise I'll hurry.
No. I'm having a lot of fun.
Okay.
So I'm happy to take up as much time.
Well, for me, with this, it's his character. So when he became a representation of the stone, he took the power. He needed more and more wishes. I think the stone just was kind of addicted to it, needed the wishes more and more. So he was becoming, he was breaking down And that's why he was like, it needs to be bigger. I need more. I need more.
I understand that. I just think it was like it wasn't presented as it just was not. And again, this is probably me watching this on Christmas Day and wanting to watch something that like I can just absorb without having to like put a lot of mental gymnastics into it.
Fair.
Which is why I also love the Real Housewives of all of the places, because it just sometimes you want to watch something that's just like blatant. But I don't know. I think that the dual villain scenario in this movie was not as successful as it has been in other superhero films. So
yeah. Well, I don't think they could pick. I don't think they picked right because, and it's kind of like the Spider-Man 3.
I agree. I think that the Cheetah character, the fact that she didn't even become the Cheetah character until the last like 20 minutes of the movie was, I mean, I think that plays into part of why it was kind of boring and why it was like stretched out all the way. Like there's an interesting character development, and then there's a very much less interesting character development. And like, I feel like if you had swapped those two, it probably would have been a better, more entertaining film.
You need a Rocky 3. If you're going to introduce a villain like that, you need a Rocky 3 storyline.
It was Apollo.
Yeah, no, Rocky 3 was Clubber Lang. That was the Mr. T.
Oh. Okay.
Shame on you for not knowing that, Mr. T fan.
I haven't seen them since they were on VHS and they sat in a box like this.
With Rocky across it?
It's really funny because Chad has been begging me to rewatch. He wants to watch the latest one because we haven't seen it. And I was like, no, we have to watch them from the beginning. And I've been putting it off for so long. I promised him I would watch those and Rambo from the beginning all the way through.
Chad, next weekend, you're watching it.
He can't hear you. But I will as a service to my wifely duties, I will put in the time to. I loved Rocky. Those were some of the first R-rated movies I ever saw.
Well, remember, Rocky, and I tell everybody this, if you watch Rocky and realize it's not a sports movie, it's a love story, you appreciate it more. The first one. The rest are very much sports movies.
Like the first Rocky, just the first one.
The first one is
I think, you could kind of, maybe not all the way through, but you could thread that. It's a multifaceted love story.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Relationship with Adrian, his relationship with Mickey, and then eventually his relationship with Apollo.
Oh, yeah. And that continues to Creed to this day, being Apollo's son. So, it works out. But I will say, to get back to Wonder Woman, because we could talk about Rocky all day, but you need to watch them first.
I've seen them in probably a decade.
Well, the storyline works, and a lot of people tend to steal that storyline in situations like this because Rocky is kind of over the top in the beginning. Like, he's the champion. He's kind of feels like he's a little invincible, and that because he's never had anybody that can go up against him and beat him. Clubber Lang steps in. Clubber Lang has that thirst to beat him, and does, and halfway through the movie. And Rocky's completely down. Mickey dies. He lost the title, and he's going downhill. But then he has to train for his rematch with Clubber Lang, and then Apollo helps him find it and get it back. And he comes back and wins because he has that thirst and that hunger again to win. If you were gonna introduce somebody who on a baser level can match Wonder Woman for all of her strength and power and give her a fight, then you needed to do it earlier. And they could have done it with the right storyline of her searching out a goddess. You've already established there were gods in this world.
Yeah. Well, that's what was so well done in the first movie, is that you have this full, you can develop a villain out of just about any character, right? Mm-hmm. But I feel like the way that they introduced Barbara was not conducive to us believing that she's going to turn into this villain to buy into. And we would not buy into the villainous side of Barbara by the end of the movie, at least for me. Like, I feel like she, there were some kind of like sketchy parts about her, and she, when she was doing the side deal or whatever it was in what looked like Columbia Heights in the 80s, or just what Columbia Heights looks like now, like, it just was not convincing to see that character become Cheetah by the time she became Cheetah. Yeah. And like, when I watch movies, I'm a big character development person. Like, I really like to see and think and kind of dissect how these people become what they are in the movie, especially a movie like this.
Mm-hmm. Well, for me, like, my biggest problems with Cheetah in the movie were I thought Kristen Wiig was a poor choice for casting. I think you need an actress who is already. You don't take a chance on a movie like this with an actress who, let's face facts, missed on a lot of those bigger movies, like that were blockbusters, like Ghostbusters, things like that, at the box office. Oh, I hate that movie so much.
I loved it.
Oh my God. I hated it so much.
Maybe the reason I loved it is Chris Hemsworth and Melissa McCarthy.
Which are probably my two favorite parts of it too. But yeah, I can go on and on about that. So,
yeah, I totally. She was not the standout that she should have been in that movie. I mean,
and she was the main character. So for I'm like, if you're telling me she's the bad guy against.
But if you were to recast Cheetah, who would you?
And I know a lot of people say this, but
you cannot pick someone who's already been in another superhero role. It has to be a woman who has not been in another comic book. I know. I almost know who you were gonna say. Who are you gonna say?
No, who do you think?
No.
I was gonna say, and the only reason, because she has proven herself as a strong, badass woman in film, and can go toe to toe with Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman, was Charlize Theron.
Oh, that threw me for a loop. She could be but like kind of predictable, right?
No, I don't think, not her. Her and Zoe Saldana are two characters who a lot of people will say when they're cast is like, oh yeah, because they're sexy. And it's like, have you seen them? Like, they're badass action heroes.
I'm not predictable in the fact that I was clearly, I love a woman, but I'm not thinking about her in terms of like her sexuality.
Oh, I'm talking about comic book geeks, not you.
I was thinking like Kerry Washington would be a good.
Ooh, yeah. Well, because you need a strong woman, and Chris, let's face it.
Also play like a dork.
Yeah.
And a badass.
I like that.
She would be a really good.
Let's face facts. Kristen Wiig, even when she was supposed to be at her most badass, still seems kind of awkward.
Yeah.
And that's why I thought she was miscast. Now, I'm not saying she shouldn't have been in a movie or been in a superhero movie, but you're not, like, there are roles that I think she would be really good in as a superhero.
Yeah.
But it wasn't Cheetah. That's not the role I thought fit.
She's on, I love, and again, I'm a total Kristen Wiig fangirl, but I feel like she's kind of like, should fit into a mold of like an Ant-Man for the female superheroes.
Yeah, there has to be some comedy to it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the they tried, but the comedy with her character was mostly just playing off the fact that she was kind of pathetic, and I think that's not I think that you can make that role into something that's, strong on both ends of the spectrum. Like casting someone who is, a little weird, but still like a brilliant scientist and a brilliant person who doesn't need to get sexually assaulted near the reflecting pool, by the way. I don't think that was a totally necessary scene.
Yeah, it did feel off. It felt like it was shoehorned in.
Yeah. But it kind of feeds into that stereotype of like women being weak and like, if she's, and I get that it makes sense in terms of like a character arc where she's going to, start off really weak and be assaulted by some businessman near the National Mall. But like, I think that there are a lot of other ways to do that without, including that kind of story into a larger movie. Like I think there are smarter ways to go around making women go from being weak to strong characters. And, if that goes from being innocent to evil, that's one thing. But I think that in terms of this movie, I just don't think it was I think it relied on a lot of old laurels that just don't necessarily need to be repeated in
the only
2021.
The only thing I did kind of like about that was that Diana stepped in to save her then. And it showed the difference of Diana was coming in and threw him across. She didn't kill him. She knew how much power to put into it to just throw him away and save her friend. But then when she does it later and actually uses her power to like kill this man, it shows the difference of the two, of like once you have power.
Yeah, but can't it be something that's not sexualized? Like, can't it be like, does it have to be like, a rape scenario? Like, does it, and I imagine that,
Oh, I 100% agree. Yeah.
Like a pretty strong agreement with me here. Like, it doesn't need to be, why not you would never see Batman or a Batman villain in a scenario where they were being sexually assaulted. And I think that like, if we're going to go, toe to toe with something like that, like playing on a ridiculous stereotype that, sexual assault equates weakness, I think is bad. I think that's why I had such a problem with that scene, is that it does, it promotes this sense that women who are subject to something like that are weaker or, have changes that are coming. They do, but
That's a great point, and I didn't think of it that way. There was something that felt off about doing it in that way and over-sexualizing that point. And yes, I feel like in a well-written story like that probably wouldn't be it, how you do it. Although Hollywood, it really is. It's very...
Of course. That's... Yeah. But there are that, and that's, I don't know. I feel like now I want to go back and watch the first movie and just see how all of these things that have come up since you asked me to come on here, how they're kind of being rehashed.
Yeah.
The first movie I loved so much, and I have a Wonder Woman onesie. I probably should have put that on, but I'm not sure where it is. Like I'm talking like I have a little crown that's on it, like it's got a hood.
That's awesome.
I bought one for my niece for her last birthday, but I don't know. I loved that first movie so much, and it just, I feel a little, again, did not get the Wonder Woman we wanted, needed, deserved for 2020.
And you know what? That's a great place to kind of put it. It kind of end it there, because it's true. you have to trust your instincts when it comes to movies. If you walk out and you don't have that feeling, it tends to be a bad movie, and you're right there with it. Especially for a movie that had so much money behind it, and she just still looked like she belonged in the movie Cats. Those VFX were tough, and they still darkened her. Like there's a lot of shadow there. But I will say, thank you so much, because you gave me a lot to think about with it too. Because even just what we were talking about with the rape scene, and thinking about it from the point of view of a man, I'm sitting there trying to not justify it, but say like, I did at least find this from it, and it's like, yeah, but why did they even do that? Like it seems kind of pointless.
You can make, there are plenty of other ways to showcase weakness in a character, and I think moving away from that scenario for women, it would be an ultimate move in the feminist direction.
Yeah, and that's a great way to put it. And hopefully we are moving away from that into a better area. Wonder Woman may not be the perfect choice for that, but then you get movies like Promising Young Woman.
Well, we're still hoping for the third installment.
True, and we will get there, and we'll see what happens. And Patty Jenkins is now in the Star Wars realm, so let's see where we go with everything. But and thank you so much for coming on and talking to me about Wonder Woman, and just kind of sharing your feelings and your knowledge about the movie.
This was a lot of fun.
Well, we'll have you back on definitely, because there's plenty of movies coming out, and I always want to learn, and you're one of the smartest human beings I know, so it's always a lot of fun. And this was a great time and a great conversation. I do want to, we were talking about the Muir Museum, and I put this up. The website is here, so everybody check it out. And you got the sweatshirt that you're wearing from there, right?
So as a museum employee, I should say that a lot of my colleagues across the nation have been laid off or furloughed due to a lot of museums being closed. And many of these institutions are offering different incentives for purchasing products from their store. One being the Muir Museum, who has created these really lovely sweatshirts, which are totally appropriate during a pandemic because spit does spread death. And this is based off of a PSA from the 1918 influenza epidemic or pandemic in 1918. And all of the proceeds for these sweatshirts go to museum staff salaries. So that's huge. It's really awesome that they're doing this. And it's a super creepy museum. So if you're in the Philly area, I highly recommend checking out the Muir.
And everybody, so I have the website up, but it will also be in the description, so you can click right below. They have some very cool stuff. I was looking at the shop. So please support, because that goes a long way. And if you need any more information, please message us at the Scene Snobs, anywhere, email, Facebook, whatever. And I will make sure to get you any of that information. Now, I do want to say thank you again, Ann, for coming on. You are going to come back on, and we're going to talk about other movies, because this has been a lot of fun. And we have other stuff planned too, because for you to come on other shows and talk. So we're going to be happy to have you back. And everybody, you can go check out the Scene Snobs reviews. The link is on. There's links to all our old episodes too, and that's on thescenesnobs.com. So until next time, I am Mick Manhattan, the Scene Snob. Thank you for joining us, and we will talk to you later. And that's our show, everybody. Thanks for listening. I am Mick Manhattan, the Scene Snob. We always appreciate you guys tuning in and commenting along and everything else. Go check out this show or any of our other shows on thescenesnobs.com. Thescenesnobs.com. We love you. You guys are awesome. And if you would like, follow and subscribe to our social media. That really helps us go a long way. And please spread the word. Tell your friends. Have them come in. We love feedback and everything else. So everybody, you have a great day. Again, thanks for listening. TheSceneSnobs.com. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon.